I saw you also ran a 43K lead up to that. How do you decide to run basically a marathon in training, and how does that work?
Yeah. To be honest, I love intentional training and structured training for the athletes that I coach, but for myself, I like to do a lot of different experiments and push myself and do fun stuff. So
Okay,
I
got
tend to do a
it.
lot more training based on what I feel like doing. Which is why I don't really
Okay.
follow like a really structured schedule. And one of the reasons is because actually I care the most about longevity. I want to be running in 10, 20, 30 years time. And that's not going to happen if I'm not
Yeah.
having fun with myself. I wouldn't say I recommend every single person to do like a 43K long run leading up to an ultra marathon because that was a hard 43K long run as well. Because I think I went through the marathon at 2:45 and then did that extra kilometer. Very taxing on the body, but luckily.
Welcome to the People Run podcast. Today is a guest that, man, I'm excited to have on. Sota Maehara. I've been following his YouTube for quite a while, and I've soaked up and learned so much game from him. He's a Japanese runner out of Perth Amboy. Talk about a difference from States all the way to Australia. So I'm happy he's on. And what I love about him is not only is he a fast runner, obviously it's subjective, but he runs ultras, he runs roads, but he also shares a lot on YouTube. If you haven't checked his stuff out, definitely check it out after this episode. He shares a lot of tips, much of I've learned as well, on anything from like coaching, running, and he puts it down in such a simple way that we can all understand. Anything from threshold, from cadence to form, what matters in form. So Ty, welcome to the People Run podcast. Thank you again. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing very well. Thank you so much, Vix. I really appreciate it, and it's really nice to know that there's like people watching my videos from all across the world. And I feel like I often talk about like the educational side of running, so I'm really excited to talk a bit more about my running journey as well, because I think not many people know about it. So this will be a good platform for me to share more of my journey too.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's definitely a perfect segue into some of the stuff I wanted to talk to you about. And I'm sure we'll get into some of the running coaching stuff. But um, one thing I was always curious, even before we linked up, is how did you start into running? I've watched a lot of the videos, probably almost all of them, after at least in the last year and a half. How did you start running? How did Japan to Perth come about?
Yeah, so there was a lot in between Japan and Perth as well, so that's the interesting bit. I guess not all of it's relevant to running, but just for a bit of context, I am Japanese, I was born there, but I only lived there till I was 8, and then I moved to Thailand to like a nice tropical island called Phuket. It's a good holiday destination, but there's a really good international British school there, and I did most of my schooling there, so end of primary school, middle school, high school, graduated from there. But yeah, during that time, I did a ton of different sports. I was really into, seeing what else is out there. So I was pretty into stuff like table tennis, badminton, football, basketball, swimming, cycling. Like I really did a bit of everything, to be honest. And yeah, I think all of those sports kind of helped out with building that general fitness up. Because when you're a kid, you can afford to do all those crazy stuff. But as I got older, I realized that my strengths kind of lie in the enduring stuff, and even in stuff like football, which again in Australia and the US you call it soccer. But yeah, I knew that I was more of an endurance background kind of guy, and I started dabbling a bit in track. Not crazy serious though. I just had a US track coach, and apparently he used to race Galen Rupp and stuff, like when he was really young or whatever, which is pretty cool. Um, But yeah, did a lot of track stuff. Not many easy runs, but because of all the track stuff, I managed to get my speed quite good, which I think does help me to this day still as well. So yeah, I'm happy with that sort of upbringing. Did a bunch of speed, and for university, I moved to Sydney, Australia, which is where the marathon just happened, the world major. But anyway, it wasn't a major back then. But yeah, kind of started dabbling a bit more in running there. That was 2018 when I moved there. But I was only doing like 20, 30 kilometers a week back then. And yeah, during COVID is when I started picking it up a lot more, which is the same as you. I know you picked up running more in COVID as well, which is awesome. Um, but yeah, during COVID, suddenly ramped it up to about 62 miles a week, which is like 100 Ks a week. And luckily, I didn't really get any major injuries or anything like that. So I managed to get a lot of fitness from that sudden ramp up. I wouldn't do that if I were to go back in time, to be honest. I would be more gradual with the build up. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I think it was a good way to kill time during COVID. And yeah, never stopped from there. Just started doing all sorts of races.
But so when did actually I want to go back. You said you started around 23K, which I believe is somewhere around a half marathon. Correct me if I'm wrong, right?
Yeah, so like 13 to 18 miles.
When did it become like serious for you and you knew you had like ability?
Yeah. In high school, when I was only doing the track stuff, I was still one of the better runners in my school because it wasn't that competitive in track. So I think that gave me a lot of motivation to do more. Yeah, I did a bunch of like road 10K races and stuff like that as well. So I got the motivation from there, but I think that was before COVID, and after COVID, when I started ramping up the training more, because I saw the improvements from there, that's probably when I really fell down the rabbit hole of endurance running. Yeah.
Gotcha. Um, what were your times like? Do you remember some of that?
Yeah. So I'd say before COVID, it was like 18 something for the 5K, probably like
That's
18,
awesome.
19 off memory. Yeah. So just under 18, 20. And then during COVID, I ramped up the training, did it for like 6 months without testing my fitness, and then I finally tried like a 5K time trial alone, and then I managed to do 16:27. So that was quite a big jump from 18
Yeah.
in 6 months. Yeah.
You just did base training for 6 months, man. I kind of envy you. I wish I did that when I started. I don't know what I was doing when I started. I do that now, being smartly now, knowing that base training is important. But was it just base training? Did you know about strides at the time, or just any speed work, or just go out the door and go?
Yeah, I mean, we had this weird rule in Australia, which is for the better, obviously, but I think we had to stick to like a 5 kilometer radius from our house, so we couldn't go further than that. So we were
Uh,
kind of restricted to the area, and you could meet up with, depending on the time of year, like with one other person or a few other people, depending on how crazy COVID was at the time. But I guess I linked up with a few people for a few speed sessions, but I'd say most of it was more to like clear my head and have something to do during COVID because that's the only time you can go outside. So yeah, most of it was base training, I would say, but with a few fast stuff trickled in. But I didn't really do strides back then, so if I was doing a speed session, it would be like a proper workout and not just strides at the end of an easy run or anything like that. And yeah, it's nice that I improved a lot from that. And I think because I already came from quite a speed background, I think doing that base training and increasing my mileage really helped a lot, which is where that huge performance gain came from. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of time from 18 to 16 in 5K, man. Kudos to you and amazing work, man. Yeah, that makes sense if you can only meet up in a 5K radius. That's one thing I've noticed when I travel outside the US is that, correct me if I'm wrong here, right? Because you've traveled and you're perf now and stuff. You had the stay in Thailand, is that people run in shorter loops more often. Maybe it's just because of the way roads are set up or traffic. Is that something you find that's common? Like for example, when I went to Japan, I realized everyone runs the same park, and that's something I've adopted now. I guess for the mental, you know, let me build a mental.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not fun. And to be honest, I'm definitely a big anomaly in terms of that because I know that people in Australia love running the same parks and everything as well, but I really love exploring different places. I like getting out into the trail, and I get bored of doing the same loop over and over again. So I like to change it up, especially when I'm in Sydney, Australia, which is where I spent 6 years living, before moving to Perth earlier this year. And even there, like I try to run as many different streets as possible to keep things fresh and run different parks, different trails. So yeah, I know that in Japan though, like you said, people love running the same park, and that's mainly because, especially in a place like Tokyo, there's a lot of traffic lights, a lot of pedestrians as well, so
Yeah,
it makes sense to go to a park to do it, and that's kind of the only place where you can actually do that. So that's probably the reason why. Yeah.
I did notice that when I was there and I was still getting my runs in, and it's like if you weren't done by 7 a.m. good luck.
Yeah,
Because you're bobbing and weaving so much you can't. And then to your point, the stoplights, it gets insane.
yeah, 100%.
how did you How did you get to your love for trails? I mean, am I correct in saying that? But I feel like you have a love for trails and doing the ultra distance.
Yeah, well, the good thing about trail is like you can do any distance as well and still really enjoy it. And I don't really know when I really got into it, to be honest, but I think over time I just started getting bored of the road and also the fact that it's so like numbers based because obviously when it's a bit more, you know, flat and manageable, the numbers come into play a bit more. But as soon as you go into the trail and you have like a lot of hills and steep descents, rocks and roots to navigate and maneuver around, you kind of forget about the pace a little bit because you have to focus on something else, which is almost like really good for me because I do come from quite like a numbers based background. Like I loved maths in high school and science and everything. But yeah, it's a good way to kind of switch off and enjoy the scenery around me. So it was more of a gradual thing over time, but I really enjoy the trail now.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, the some of the scenery I see you share sometimes, I'm just like, oh, it's just like very nice, clear water. And I saw some of the early Sydney stuff. Well, I should say it's gone now, past this past weekend, so that was cool too. Did you have any influences growing up, like specific people that like you look towards when it came to running that got you into the game? Like, oh, I like this person, I want to try to emulate this.
Yeah, I mean, not, I wouldn't say too much. Like I've always been a fan of watching the sport and yeah, I think when I first got into the track stuff in high school, the big names were like Mo Farah and Galen Rupp and stuff. And I don't really follow them much anymore, but I definitely used to watch Mo Farah's like 10K races and his like extremely fast final laps and stuff. And that gave me a lot of motivation. But I think after I started running more myself, I I didn't watch as much or yeah, I didn't like look up to any one person in particular, but I just generally enjoyed watching the sport and seeing the storylines of like many different runners and seeing rivalries between two people and stuff like that. But yeah, I think no one in particular comes to mind. It's more that in Sydney, I had incredible opportunities to like take photos or videos for elite athletes, and I feel like when you get to know them at a personal level more, you become really big fans of them. So I'd say, if anything, yeah, I look up to especially the people that I know in person and I know what they've been through and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. You're seeing the day in and day out, their grind, their habits, their patterns, routines, and stuff that in person can help shape you and mold you, or maybe you can adapt to your own running. Um, you have also a exercise science background. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like, how does that help shape you in one YouTube and also your own running? Is there stuff you take from there? I feel like a lot of the content of yours I watch too is broken down. Like I mentioned earlier, it is very science heavy, but you break it down in a very simple way.
Yeah, thank you. I do love simplifying more complex stuff because yeah, not every person needs to know all the scientific details as long as they, you know, can apply the most important things to their training because that's what matters at the end of the day. And it is interesting how I got into exercise science because when I finished high school, I wasn't really sure what to do, but I knew that, you know, I was definitely interested in science and sports, so it just kind of made sense for the meantime to get that done, which is why I got into it. And yeah, it ended up being really good because we learned a little bit about everything. Like we had to do our own VO2 max test and we got assessed on how well we did that.
Cool.
And also like we learned a bit about lactate testing, which meant that I could practice like pricking fingers and yeah, understanding what the numbers mean and stuff like that. And even like learn a bit about the muscles and whatnot, and then biomechanics as well, so gait analysis. It was a little bit of everything. We never went into like huge detail because it was undergrad and it's a very broad course where you learn a little bit about everything. So I wouldn't say I'm like an expert at everything, but obviously compared to someone that hasn't done exercise science, you learn a fair amount, and then you can do your own learning outside of it as well, related to running specifically, because obviously exercise science was like all different sports, but
Mhm.
yeah, I think just tying that all together and teaching, I feel like is a great way to learn yourself as well. So I think it
Yes.
helps to learn how to make that information more digestible. And then as a result of that, I learned a lot myself too. Yeah.
Yeah, I can agree and relate to that. I've always said, professionally, work wise, I've always been in like some presentations kind of role, and I've always felt if you can teach a topic or whatever, you're usually going to be very well versed yourself because it's a different thing to know. It's another whole thing entirely to teach it and have someone retain it. So I definitely relate to that. um, Talking about coaching, right? So like you got all the knowledge and background, you coach yourself. Uh, you share a lot of information on stuff that's insane. Usually you get from a coach, but you share it freely on YouTube. What I want to ask you is, what are some of the like coaching philosophies you hold that are yours, Sota, like unique to you or that you favor?
Yeah, I think every good coach does this, and I'm sure that you do as well. But I think it's really important to remember that everyone comes from a different sporting and running background, and their training age is how many years you've been running, is yeah, plays a huge factor in how you should train as well. And there's still, even then, there's a lot of ways to become a better runner. Like there's no one formula, even for a specific athlete. So yeah, just being really open-minded and being good at communicating with the athletes so that you have the best background possible before deciding how to go about the training is really important. Different people have different schedules because some people do 9 to 5, they have a regular schedule, right? But other people, because I coach a lot of business owners who
Okay.
have very irregular schedules. They have to travel one week and their meetings are at really different times. So every single week might look different for them compared to someone that's working 9 to 5 who has a regular schedule. So yeah, I think that's the main thing to consider. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. And that's like the true all around holistic is a crutch word a lot of people used to like to use word to go about it. But I feel like in order to do that, someone like yourself is able to because you have a lot of knowledge in all the approaches, like for example, VO2 versus threshold, long tempo versus cruise intervals, and you have all those tools at your disposal because you're very well knowledge and versed, and that's what I love about a lot of your stuff you share as well. What do you see, like actually piggybacking on that, a business owner that's often traveling and whatnot? Like, how does their structure and plan change? Because typically you might not be able to do a 7 day week cycle or 9 week, sorry, 9 day cycle, et cetera, et cetera. Like, how are you maneuvering? What kind of speed workouts or long runs? What are you seeing with the people you coach?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely more of a day-to-day basis when people are traveling because I think traveling is an extra stress in itself. And it's, yeah, important to understand that and then adapt based on that, I guess. So I talk to the athlete, see where their headspace is at in terms of like doing workouts, because sometimes the athlete wouldn't know what the best place to do the workout is as well. Like if you just have a lot of traffic lights, then it's really hard to actually do a workout if they don't know where the best place to have like a long stretch of road is. So I would ask the athlete if they know anywhere good to do it, and if not, then we can always work around that and yeah, do a speed workout right before they go to travel and maybe right after, and then in between just do easy runs while they're traveling because that's less stress on the body anyway. And again, like I said, traveling adds that stress. So yeah, it's more about having a communication with them and just seeing what works the best. So yeah, I would forget about 7 day cycles and 9 day cycles and whatever cycle and think more day to day and check in with them and see how they're going. Because even in the middle of the trip, if they find a good place to do it, then we can adapt the training a little bit to do one session in that second half of the trip if they find a good place. Yeah.
No, that makes sense, and it's pretty cool that you're able to like be that flexible. Like, okay, let's look at today. Let's look at it again tomorrow. It's something I favor as well because there's a lot of stressors of life and stuff that happen. Want to ask you a little bit about tempo and like threshold combined with long run, right? And the reason I'm asking this is because I've kind of shifted myself to the cruise side, after looking at studies and stuff. And I saw you recently shared that as well. But you had shared that like you do longer tempo sessions, even though the science says otherwise. Can you talk to me and for the listener of like the difference and the benefits of, say breaking it up in cruise intervals versus like, okay, I'm going to go 30 minutes out at XYZ pace.
Yeah, for sure. So again, I love this topic, which is why I talk about it quite often in my videos, and I might need to make another video on it as well, because I think I've always only made it like a subsection of a video, but it can definitely become one video in itself. But yeah, I think the terminology is different because you call it cruise intervals and long tempos and stuff, but other people might call it threshold intervals versus continuous tempo. There's a lot of different names, but they're all kind of the same thing. But yeah, the main thing we're trying to break down is the difference between a longer tempo effort versus breaking up that tempo effort into shorter intervals. And the main thing that people need to understand is that lactate is a really good indicator of the amount of hydrogen ions that are present. And the hydrogen ions is actually what makes your legs feel a little heavier. But lactate is just kind of a byproduct that coexists, and it's a good and easier way to measure it, which is why we use lactate measurements. But yeah, essentially, we want to spend as much time in that sweet spot where we're clearing lactate as roughly as quick as we're producing it. And it takes a while to get to that stage if you're doing a longer tempo effort, because you might be spending the first 20
Yes.
minutes rising that or raising that lactate to get to that sweet spot, and you're only spending the last 10 minutes of a 30-minute tempo at that sweet spot. Whereas if you break it up into intervals and you're running a little quicker for those repetitions, you can actually run and spike that lactate a little bit quicker to that sweet spot, and then you have that rest in between the reps. And then you actually spend way more time at the end of the day. So, let's say 30-minute tempo versus 3 by 10 minutes. You're raising that lactate value a bit quicker. So, by the end of that first rep, you're already at that sweet spot, and then you're spending basically the rest of the workout at that sweet spot. So, that's the benefit. But if you do too many threshold intervals, you're probably going to get bad at gauging what pace is sensible. So when it comes to a race, you might go out way too quick because you're used to going a little quicker for your, tempo efforts or threshold efforts. So that's why once in a while it's good to still do that longer tempo effort to make sure you have yourself in check. You know how to pace yourself well, not go out too quick. But most of the gains will come from spending a lot of time at threshold, and that's why I'm a big advocate for doing a lot of threshold intervals. So I'm a big fan of like 25 by 400 with short rest to make sure the lactate doesn't go too much in the rest. And yeah, you can actually play around with different repetitions as well. And yeah, that's why it's not just like long tempo and threshold intervals. There's stuff in between as well, like that 3 by 10 minutes that I talked about. That's still pretty long reps, so you still have to be pretty good at pacing. Whereas 400-meter threshold intervals, you can actually go quite quick, almost like 5K pace, but still not spike the lactate, which is great. And it's a great way to get fast and fit and teach yourself how to clear lactate even while running at a pretty specific race pace. Yeah.
I love that, and you even answered my follow up to that, which was going to be about the rhythm and the continuous tempo, whether you lose it or you don't, in your opinion. But you answered that, and like you, I could talk about this topic all day. I'll ask you this. I'll share what I'm doing, but like, do you periodize it, like where you say with yourself or with like coaches athletes you coach? For example, like, hey, we might do in 1 month 3 crews and one continuous tempo, to kind of get them to like, you got to get that rhythm going, or do you periodize it based on like, hey, we're just training right now to build speed versus we're focused on a race?
Yeah. I think one thing I like to do, again, you're gonna keep hearing this, but I'm a big fan of communication. So I would ask the athlete myself, I'll be like, how would you rate your ability to pace evenly in a race and stuff, you know? So I'll get their opinion, and then I'll also try and make them do a time trial. So whether it's a 5K, 10K, or a half, or I would look at their recent race, and if they can show me their activity, I'll see how they paced it and stuff. And if they seem like someone that's good at pacing, then I wouldn't have as much of a focus on continuous tempo. So I might only do that like once over a 16-week block. But if I see someone that's not great at pacing, then I might do it more often. So exactly what you said, like 3 weeks of cruise intervals and then one long tempo, and then like kind of do it that way. So again, very individual with the approach as usual with all my athletes. Um, But yeah, that would be the main things I would look out for. Like if you're good at pacing, you can do it less often and focus more on the intervals. But if you're bad at pacing, try and do that once in a while. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. And that's like a perfect breakdown. It's one I used to do because I feel like a lot of the old school stuff, and I say old school relatively because I feel like it's more, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's been in the last year or two more that people are shifting more to cruise versus, hey, it used to be like every workout you had a 6 mile or 12K continuous tempo, and now people are breaking it up because they're seeing the benefit, and a lot of people are doing it now. Want to touch on long runs, right? And the reason I'm going to preface this, the reason I'm asking is because I've seen some of your stuff, and then I look at like what other countries are doing, what we do here in the States. What is your approach to long run with yourself or those you coach? Like, do you prefer, hey, easy long run? No, steady, progressive long run. We're going to throw a workout in the long run. What's your approach?
Yeah. Um, I firstly look at what we're training for. So if I'm only training for a 5K, then I feel like the more you go above 2 hours in a long run, it's just like increased injury risk and not much in return. So I think 2 hours is like
Yes.
plenty for a 5K, right? And still, it depends on the person. So not every 5K runner is going to do 2 hours as well. Like some people might only be doing 90 minutes or 75 minutes, depending on their running background. But I'm using myself for an example. But um, yeah, for a 5K, I'd be focused more on like getting in some quality work. And I haven't done a 5K specific block in ages, but I'm actually really excited to get back into that at some point. But yeah, threshold is actually really good because it's kind of that sweet spot. So you still get a lot of that base benefit as well as your ability to like clear lactate on the go. So you get that aerobic base benefit anyway, so we don't need to like do a ton of huge long runs if we're getting in a good amount of volume at threshold, which is why people are doing a lot of double threshold days. And obviously not recommending double threshold to everyone, but for the people that do, you're actually having a 30-kilometer training day in the middle of the week. So you don't really need to just do an extra really hard long run to add even more stress. So I think that's how I kind of look at it. And obviously, if we're doing more marathon stuff, then we want that huge base and we want to get in as much volume as possible without fatiguing ourselves and injuring ourselves. So keeping a lot more of the week easy and then maybe, yeah, having that long run where you add in a bit of effort in the second half of the run. But at the same time, even then, I would alternate between like long run workout, easy run, or easy long run workout, easy long run. So every week doing a different type of long run, but alternating each week. Um, and yeah, there's still the benefit of doing progression runs as well. It still depends on who the athlete is, but
Yes.
someone who's notorious for going out way too quick at the start, it's nice to teach them progression within a long run. So maybe I'll make them do that if that's something that we need to work on. So yeah, trying to look at the weakness of the athlete and then tailoring it around that is the best way. But I'm always a big fan of variety. I talk about this all the time in my YouTube videos, but um yeah, having a little bit of everything in terms of long run is probably the best. And you can decide last minute as well. If you're not feeling good that day, then you can change it to like an easy long run and then push the long run workout to next week. So being highly
Following. Yeah.
flexible and adaptable is good. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. I love hearing the variety about it. You know, it makes it also fun in a training block as opposed to like a monotonous, okay, I have another 18, 16 miler. Okay, I have another 16, 18 miler. Um, talking I want to talk about your racing, right? So like you've done a lot of like ultras. I saw recently you did an 80K time trial. Congrats on that. I think I saw you were like ninth elite, and then I saw I think earlier in the year is that Red Bull race that they do out there, and you were like first in perf. So again, congrats to that. I saw you also ran a 43K lead up to that. How do you decide to run basically a marathon in training, and how does that work?
Yeah. To be honest, I love intentional training and structured training for the athletes that I coach, but for myself, I like to do a lot of different experiments and push myself and do fun stuff. So
Okay,
I
got
tend to do a
it.
lot more training based on what I feel like doing, which is why I don't really
Okay.
follow like a really structured schedule. And one of the reasons is because actually I care the most about longevity. So I want to be running in 10, 20, 30 years time. And that's not going to happen if I'm not
Yeah.
having fun with myself. And even if that means I'm sacrificing a little bit of performance in the short term, I'm willing to do that to make sure I still enjoy the sport later on. So I wouldn't say I recommend every single person to do like a 43K long run leading up to an ultra marathon because that was a hard 43K long run as well. Because I think I went through the marathon at 2:45 and then did that extra kilometer or whatever. Um, so yeah, very taxing on the body. But luckily, I was really fit during that time at least, so I could actually handle it, and that was still not like a maximal effort in training or anything, which is good because I recovered quickly. I still ran every single day for the week after, and there was no interruption to training. So yeah, still staying within yourself, even if you're doing something a little bit stupid, is important, I guess. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm a big fan of changing it up in training. Yeah.
No, there's for sure some psychology to that. And I love the longevity wanting to run in the sport. You see that here a lot in the States. People are really fast, but because it's so a job, if you will, they're burnt out young, early age, and they stop running, or worse, they get injured, and it's an injury they can't come back from. Where like, as opposed to having fun, and on that, right? And I know this is, I'll preface this by saying this is more for like the advanced runner, right? So like 2:45, you run through the full basically, and you're in training. For let's say the elite or the advanced runner, do you have a kilometer max or a time max on feet that they should be running? Obviously, this doesn't apply to ultra, I'm sure, because ultra you want to get those 3 hour runs and so on. And the reason I ask this is here you often hear in the States, for example, 2.5 hours after that, the risk of injury just basically shoots up. Is that something you ever factor in?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you said 2.5 hours because obviously you hear different stuff from everyone. Like what I hear is 2 hours. And yeah, I think regardless whether it's 2 hours or 2.5 hours, it is definitely a fact that, you know, there's the marginal return curve, right? So as in the further you get, the less you're getting per extra distance. So you're just risking yourself for injury more. And the best runners kind of know where that fine line lies and also based on what level they're competing at. Because obviously an elite runner or an elite marathoner, they do have to push that envelope a little bit, risk themselves a little bit to get that little extra percentage gain over their competitors. But for the regular runner, it's definitely not worth that risk. So I wouldn't say there's like a max number for a general population because it's gonna depend. But it's good to know that that risk exists as you increase the distance of your long runs. So my best tip actually is I saw this study done recently. I think it was on like 5,200 runners. They looked at them across 18 months. So that's a very long
Mhm.
study looking at them
Yeah.
following through for like 18 months. But they captured all their Garmin activities and they noticed that the people that reported niggles and injuries, it mainly came from a sudden spike in their long run distance. So it's actually really important to do long runs very consistently and not suddenly spike it. So you want to really gradually build it over time. And one really big tip that I give a lot of people is to always focus on um, using mileage to justify long runs or longer long runs
Yes.
rather than using a longer long run to justify more mileage. So if you want to increase your weekly mileage, you shouldn't just randomly do a 43K long run. You want to make sure that your other runs in the week are higher and you get used to that higher mileage. Once your mileage is higher, then you can look at increasing the long run. We don't want to keep bumping up the long run and then therefore increasing the weekly mileage. That's really important.
No, I agree, and I share similar, and that's part why I asked to kind of like you said. There's you hear 2 hours, we hear 2.5. I often look on Strava. You got access to the world nowadays. A lot of the elites are on YouTube or Strava, Instagram, and they share the long runs. And I notice so much variance where it's like, I've never seen them run over 2:15, 2:30. but they're getting 20 miles in, right? It's not, to your point, the bulk of their runs for the week. So I was curious on your side of the world, like what is that number, and if you changed it for the coaches, because I often, I'll just be quite frank, I'll see recreational runners, some that are even very fast, and it'll be like 3 hours on feet, and yeah, you got your 18-20 miler, but I often think, I wonder if I would have prescribed the 220 and just taken off 30 seconds off of the pace for them to get faster speed and the same time just repeatedly, and probably there's more benefit for that. That's what goes through my head, and that's kind of why I asked that. um
Yeah, as well. So if you're training for like an ultra marathon, or even if you're training for a marathon and you don't have that weekly mileage to justify that slightly longer long run, you could actually experiment with stuff like, so I don't know what day of the week do you do your long runs? Saturday or Sunday? Or some
Saturday
other
or
day?
Sunday, it depends. I try to
Okay.
stick at Saturdays, but if I don't feel right, I'll move it.
For example, if you do a long run on Sunday and you don't want to, spike that long run distance suddenly and do like a really long run compared to usual, a good way to actually increase volume is doing a Saturday night, like medium run, followed by a
Mhm.
Sunday morning long run, because then you get a sleep in between. But in that 12-hour period, you do two runs and then you increase that distance, but you still get that recovery of that sleep in between, which is huge and way less risk of injury than doing one huge run that you're not prepared for. So that's a good way to not spike your long run distance, but still get good training in with recovery in between. Yeah.
Yeah, it's essentially like a double, but with more, well, basically a full 8 hours, or ideally 8 hours, or whatever
Yeah.
you sleep.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, there's ways to work around it. So the most important thing is if you're fairly new to running and you're not ready to just do a 20-mile long run in training, then there's other ways to navigate around it. So it's just working with a coach that kind of knows their stuff to be able to, yeah, find out an alternative way to still prepare you for the race, but not have a huge risk of injury. Yeah.
Do you, in your side of the world in Perth, right, or the runners you coach across the world, do you often see like you're a runner, they're running a long race, right? Let's say anything over a half. They do still go, hey, I'm going to do an 18-20 miler. Like they may not, to your point, be ready to the point that they maybe should be doing a 20 miler if they're doing, for example, sorry, I just realized I'm saying miles versus case, but let's just say 30K, right? That they're not ready to do 30K in distance yet, but their weekly mileage is probably under 60. Do you see people still do that on your side of the world, or they'll just
Yeah.
figure it out with the coach?
Luckily not with my athletes that I coach because they're very
Of course.
aware of all this stuff. But yeah, I think in general I do see it a lot. I think
Okay.
because a lot of people are influenced by what other people are doing online, like
Yeah.
you see it on Instagram and all that, these crazy long runs. I think people get tempted to like jump in and hop on the bandwagon, I guess. But um, I think it's always a red flag to see a person's weekly mileage and then half of their weekly mileage coming from one run,
Yes.
That's always kind of a red flag and a risk of injury. So yeah, I try my best to educate on that, but yeah, people still do it.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
very similar.
yeah,
I was thinking it might be a little different, but no, I hear you. And I run into the same thing with like some of the people I coach or just some friends I see and stuff. On that note, what are some common mistakes you do see, like with your athletes, that you do correct, but you see common? Like if it were to boil it down to just three.
yeah. I think what I said about the long run's definitely a big one. Like when they
Okay.
first come to me, having their long run be a huge portion of the weekly mileage, that's definitely a very common thing I see. Second thing is definitely like not being able to hold back in some of the workouts because the
Okay.
main thing that's important to understand is that every intensity will give you a different type of benefit, and it's not compartmentalized either. Like I said earlier, threshold, great way to build your base, but also get that lactate buffering benefit. So it's not like black or white, but with different intensities, you're focusing a bit more on different types of physiological adaptations. So that's why I want to make sure that if we're doing a certain like sweet spot effort or threshold effort, I do want to make sure the athlete isn't going all out because some of the athletes that I coach that are really, really excited and keen, the first few weeks, it takes a while for me to try and get them to understand the importance of holding back in some of these workouts. And then for the faster sessions, I'm happy for them to go a bit quicker, you know? So that's another thing. Um, and I guess the final thing is a topic that I'm not an expert on, but I'm learning more and more as I talk to more nutritionists and stuff. But the importance of fueling before, during, and after. Like, it makes such a big difference when you fuel properly in terms of how you feel the next day. And the difference in perceived exertion for the run the next day is, yeah, really bad if you don't fuel up right after the run.
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, you definitely want to replenish the carbohydrates right after the run. Definitely get your protein in. And during the run, if it's a long run, you definitely want to get in carbs, whether it's from drink mix powder, drink, or gels and whatever. Before the run as well, you don't want to go in on an empty stomach because blood flows to where you're using, I guess. So if your stomach has a bit of whatever in it, it doesn't have to be a big meal, but even if you just take a spoon of jam and there's something in your stomach, there's blood flow going to it. So you're actually less likely to get stomach issues if you actually have a little bit of food rather than having completely nothing, is what I heard from a nutritionist. Yeah. So fueling is important.
No matter where you go, definitely fuel. You got to fuel for the workout, and often we try to skimp on it because we want to lose weight or we want to fat oxidize or whatever. But food is the name of the game. What do you think is overhyped or underrated? You share a lot of good tips on like all kinds of stuff, right? Like how to get cadence, simple ways to get your strength in, ways to get your gel in, durability in long runs, why you do the long run this way versus this way. Like, what do you think currently in the running space is overhyped or underrated?
Yeah, I think overhyped would be, I like to think of recovery as the most important thing in running because if you don't recover well, you can't train more. And if you can't train more, you're not going to race well. So it all stems from recovery, right? And a lot of people spend so much money on recovery, which gives them like a 1% benefit, but they forget about stuff like sleep and eating well, which we just talked about. And that doesn't cost as much as, buying a massage gun, buying a huge like Normatec boot or whatever, which again, it might help, but a lot of people overlook the free stuff and then go straight to like spending hundreds of dollars on gear that might only help a little bit. So that's one thing that I think people should be more aware of. Like, look at the huge gains that you can get from like less money spent. Um, Same in terms of like running in general. You know, you could get all this fancy gear, whatever that may be, but at the end of the day, doing smart training could get you the 30 or 20 to 30% gain, whereas that gear might only give you 1%. So I think being more aware, to not like fall into the trap of the influencers and stuff, promoting products. And again, that's why I'm quite reserved in terms of like what brands I work with and stuff because I don't want to be promoting products that aren't really helping out. So yeah, I think it's important to have a good eye for that. And yeah, I think I answered both questions with that because underrated is
Yeah.
the free stuff
Yeah,
that you could
you did.
work on. So yeah. Hmm.
No, and I do. I have noticed that you're very meticulous about what you bring on, and that's awesome because there's a lot of noise out there, man. We definitely see it a lot on this side too. It's just like the shoes, the boots, the cold plunge, where like 10 hours of sleep if you can, that's a lot. But if you can't, take some naps. We'll do a lot more. I've noticed. I've been doing a lot of napping on this training block, and I feel great. And that's free as you mentioned. Talk to me about like YouTube. How did that start for you, man? And you've done a great job with it, but like what made you want to get into YouTube and share just so much wealth and get into that space?
Yeah. I think I'm really lucky that I just happened to do it since the age of maybe like 11. And obviously I've had a few different channels over the years, but um for some reason I just kept doing it. I've made so many now, like over 1,400, I think. But you learn a bit from every single one, and obviously a lot of them were crap back in the day, so that's never gonna go on the internet ever again. It's private, but um
Part of the
Yeah,
game.
I don't know. I think the feedback that you get, and when people say that this has been really helpful, it really motivates you to do more of it. And I think even from a coaching business, it's really helped a lot to give free advice because you need to prove your knowledge, and then people will, yeah, be willing to hire you for extra expertise anyway. And at the end of the day, I'd say most of my clients, they just want to not think about what to do, and they just want to do safe training guided by an expert. Like they might know their stuff, but they want to take the thinking out of it and focus on their business or whatever. That's why I said I have a lot of business owners that are my clients. So yeah, it helps you to kind of give you a platform to prove to everyone that you know your stuff, and then you can make your own business out of it. So I think it's definitely helped me out over time. And I didn't really research in advance thinking that this was ever going to happen. I never planned to do all this stuff, but it all just fell into place. So I'm pretty grateful for what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, man. You're doing great, and it's traveling across the world over here. um, on that note, do you find like the YouTube and content creation helps like your personal running? Like because hey, I'm studying for like for example this video, I learned more about this topic, or like oh man, I spent so much hours, I should have got my run in like 3 hours ago. Do you find it helps or takes away from your personal running?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall it helps. I like the fact that everything I do in my life is related to running. So I think
That's cool.
from
Yeah,
like a motivational standpoint, it's really good. And if anything, the biggest thing is like the connections you make through it is the most important because I've met some really cool people through it as well. So I think that's what I've appreciated the most over the years of doing it. Yeah.
that's cool. Yeah, for sure. Um, as far as coaching, right? You mentioned kind of like the people you coach and them having to be able to free their mind from. Are you yourself coached by someone, or you self coach?
Yeah, I'm self-coached because I feel like I'm kind of uncoachable in the sense that I signed up for races pretty last minute, and I again really like different types of stuff. So sometimes I'm into trail, sometimes I want to work on my 5K, and that fluctuates way too much, and I think I wouldn't be able to commit. I'm a big fan of intuitive and flexible training, so week to week I'm going to feel different, and knowing that is the best way for me to just coach myself and do what's right in that week. So I think that's why I usually go for self-coaching. And I mean, if you have the knowledge anyway, you might as well coach yourself and save that money a little bit. So I think that's where that comes from. And yeah, I also like traveling different places. I think it's pretty cool that you've lived in Florida, New York, um,
Yeah,
Seattle, and
yeah,
Colorado. Like those are some cool states and different climates and stuff. Um, but yeah, I move around a lot as well. So depending on that, my plans can change a lot. And the Sydney trip that I recently did as well, that was like really last minute plan. And if I had a coach, they would have like, been stressed
you're
that
gonna
I'm
mess
just
up the
moving
plan.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's kind of why I coach myself. Yeah.
What's your favorite arena if you had to pick one? Track, road, or ultra?
Yeah, I think it's probably ultras because there's so many factors that come into play, and you need to have that perfect day where everything aligns, including stuff that's outside of your control, like weather and stuff, for you to do well. So I think it makes it more exciting, and it also shows that you have to plan a lot to have a good race. Because the shorter the distance, you don't need to rely as much on having that huge base as well. So you might be able to fake a good 5K time as an ultramarathoner, but for an ultramarathon, you definitely need the prep. You need to put the miles in, and if it's a hilly race, you need to get the hills in as well. So there's no hiding from a good race when it comes to ultramarathons, and that's what I like about it. But because of that, it can be really brutal as well. I'm not saying the shorter distances aren't brutal either. Like that's a different sport in my opinion, which is why I respect everyone that does track. Um, and my track friends also respect the ultramarathoners. So I think it's really cool that we almost see it as a different sport and we have mutual respect for each other. Yeah, but I don't know, what do you like? Do you like marathons or 5Ks?
It's funny. I would say marathon for now, right? Because we were talking even before we started recording that like I find the short distance really hard, and it is my plan for 2026 to work on after this marathon. I got to kind of jump into some 5Ks, 10Ks to just one get those out of my head, but also work on speed. But I will say, I don't know, something about the marathon. It's kind of how you describe ultra, and you can't fake that distance, and you have to train for it when you want to have success, right? Anyone can sign up for a marathon, and yeah, you can walk it, you can run it, there's nothing wrong with that. But in order to, once you change that mindset to I want to start doing good, you have to put in work. And yeah, I find similar to you, it's probably more for you ultra because you have to train a lot more and more mileage, I'm sure. But like you have to get in those long runs, you have to get in that fueling, you have to get in that rest. You got life coming in, work, and you got to maneuver work around it. Like you, I like traveling, obviously. I think we have that in common. So then it's like, okay, I want to travel for that race, but then I got to find out the logistics for how I'm going to make it work. But it's all part of the fun. But I love all distances. I love watching the sport. I love watching the track stuff. So some of these people are getting insanely fast nowadays. It's amazing. I think eventually I will jump into the ultra arena. I do live in one of the states where it always happens.
Yeah.
uh, it's in my backyard. I see it all the time. I could literally like drive 20 minutes and get into some crazy vert and like really nice gravel or like really rocky terrain, basically all kind of ultra. I'm just currently want to have my fun in the road and get a little faster than that before I jump. So I'd say, to sum it all up, marathon for now. I don't see the short distance ever being my favorite, but I do want to do it.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that you kind of have to do to carry on improving in the marathon as well. Because if you're limited by the 5K, which might be the ceiling for speed for most people, like because we're 1500, 800, I feel like that's another world. But anyway, yeah, if you're limited by a 5K speed, you're always going to have that ceiling and you can't improve once you get everything closer to that, right? So at the end of the day, it all does come from the speed. So while you can, it's really good to work on the speed because, again, if you can't do a 4 minute kilometer, you can't do a 20-minute 5K, you can't do a 40-minute 10K, and you won't be able to do a 3 hour marathon. So once you get that speed up, you increase your potential, is where I'm getting at. Yeah.
Yeah, no, agreed. That's something I've been cognizant and thinking of. And to the point you said earlier, threshold's been helping me a lot. I've been doing a lot of threshold for a couple of months now, and I've seen tremendous gains from it. Um, Talking about these three arenas they're running, I'm curious. I usually a lot of us like sneakers and stuff, but what did your shoe rotation look like? I just thought of it, and I'm not asking just because you're a runner. It's just because you row, track, ultra. You gotta have like four different types of shoes for each kind of race.
Yeah, I think I have like 30 shoes right now, which is not good. But
All going at the same time.
no, no. Well, I
Oh, okay.
mean, I try to use most of it though. Yeah.
Okay.
I but I guess some of them are racing, which I don't use often. So I have like Alpha Flies, Metaspeed, Edge, Paris, and Tokyo, and the Adios Pro 4 and stuff. So some of them, yes, they don't get used that often, but in terms of all the other shoes, I yeah, use it quite frequently. I try and rotate a good amount, and once you run for a while, you start to notice stuff like, a certain type of niggle um means you should wear a certain type of shoe. And there's no I mean, there is some science to back up like where you load up in the leg, but at the same time, it's still really different for everyone depending on your biomechanics and running form. So you'll start to notice patterns yourself on what shoes make you feel better in certain parts of the leg on each day. So I kind of do it that way. I kind of know what my legs are wanting that day, and that's how I pick what shoe I wear. So yeah, it gets quite interesting, and I wear, I'm pretty brand neutral, plenty of different brands, probably over 12. Yeah.
It kind of sounds like you do it based off feel, but is there anything that you've had to do over the years to strengthen your foot, for example? Because you might do it. I'm going on the trails today, and it's uneven terrain. Tomorrow I might hit the track, and I favor this kind of shoe where it might be flatter. Is there anything you've ever had that came up or that you do to strengthen your foot?
Yeah. I think so road running and track running, you tend to use more of your like anterior and posterior muscles, so like the muscles at the front and the back, because that's where the motion is going. But when you're running the trail, you land in different angles. So it actually requires you to strengthen your muscles on the sides a bit more. So we call them your lateral muscles or medial muscles. So yeah, that's stuff like your tibialis posterior, tibialis anterior, um, and also your peroneals. So I think they're also called fibularis muscles, but they are found more on the side and they kind of control ankle inversion, eversion, and like pronation, supination, that sort of stuff. But yeah, that's really important when you go in the trail because again, you're landing in uneven surfaces and that requires a bit of strengthening. And if you don't do the strengthening for those muscles, then they can get overloaded if you're not used to it and you just suddenly go in the trail a lot. So that's something I try and be mindful of. Also, in general, for every type of runner, the muscle called the soleus or soleus, everyone says it differently, but it's a calf muscle. Um, that's the muscle that has to withstand the most amount of force when you're running. So when you're running, it's actually like 7 to 8 times your body weight, and because of that, it's really important to strengthen it. Best way to strengthen it is to actually do bent leg calf raises with as much weight as you can. So, yeah, that's something important that I recommend every runner to do, bent leg calf raises, but also straight leg calf raises. In general, you're working every muscle, so general leg strength is really important. But yeah, if I had to pinpoint a few, that would be the few that I would focus on.
No, that's a great tip, man. And for those listening, I just want to regurgitate that. Soleus, big one there. Trail, I don't know why I've never thought of that, but lateral, yeah, that comes into play a lot. Train the lateral, which that's definitely some good tip for those listening. Just take that in. Um, so, how do you balance all this? Right, you got, I believe, university, you got YouTube, you run a lot of mileage, right, or time, I should say, right? How do you balance all this?
Yeah, I think this is something I'm always trying to navigate through. And to be honest, I go through phases where I balance it very well and other times where I feel like I'm falling behind. The most important thing for me, though, is that at least I enjoy everything I do. So
Okay.
that always means that, there's a baseline level of productivity that I always have thanks to genuinely enjoying it, right? I'm never gonna like become a complete couch potato and do nothing because yeah, that's not going to happen just because I enjoy it. And running is a good way to clear your head as well. So making sure you have an avenue to clear your head, and luckily that's running for me, which is very productive because I am a runner as well. So I get that training and clearing my head done at the same time. That really helps. And yeah, going to uni, I have to take a 30-minute train, but luckily I can sit down and go on my laptop and do my coaching then, and also study a little bit then as well. So that helps as well. And if you're just making running content, you can do it while you're running, with friends. You don't film every run, obviously, but like when you are filming, you can do it on the run. So you've probably seen a lot of my videos where I'm filming while running. So that
Yeah.
is another way to be productive. But yeah, I think it's still important to have those days where you don't do much as well. So um, when I lived in Sydney, I used to love hiking and going out for like 10 hours and not worrying about anything else that day except for just enjoying nature. Um,
Yeah, that's cool.
I haven't done that in a while and I haven't done that much in Perth, but I'd love to do more of that as well. So I wouldn't say I'm a perfect person, but it's nice that everything ties together and that I enjoy. So that's probably the practical tip. Like hopefully do stuff that you enjoy and make your life work around that would be the best tip.
Follow up with that. What do you do for fun? So it sounds like a little bit of hiking. What else do you do to take a break?
Yeah, I used to play a lot of piano because that was a good
Okay.
thing that's not running, which is again
Yeah.
important as well to do stuff outside of running. But I don't know, in general, I do love photography, videography. I appreciate that sort of stuff, like well filmed and well framed photos. So yeah, that's really good. I enjoy eating a lot. I don't like cooking though, so that's usually an issue. Because that means I eat out a lot. But um, yeah, I'd say those are the main things. And when I am interested in what I'm studying, and for context for the listeners, I study Masters of Physiotherapy. There's parts of it that I don't like, and there's parts of it that I'm really interested in. But if it's something I'm interested in, I love studying as well. So yeah, it really depends. But yeah, I don't have any like crazy interesting hobbies, but they all still help me out a bit in one way or another.
Yeah, for sure. What does the family and friends think of all your like running, your races when they see these? Oh my God, he was out for 6 hours, or he's running so fast, and or they see your YouTube.
Yeah, I've been on one like trip with my friends where yeah, they don't run and then I just went out for like a 6 hour run. And yeah, they were probably like, what the hell is wrong with this guy? But um I'd say mostly my friends are runners as well, so they kind of understand the lifestyle and all that. But yeah, a lot of people do wonder the same as what you just asked, like how I balance everything. And yeah, I think it's interesting because I try and make sure the videos um also reflect, as in how many videos I make reflect how busy I am. So if I'm less busy with other parts of my life, I can make more videos. So yeah, I think something's always gotta sacrifice a little bit. A lot of the times it is social life for me, but luckily running is also part of my social life.
Part of your social, yeah.
So yeah, I think it's just dialing back the levers and having a balance is really important to consider. Yeah.
Well, you definitely make it work. I was, like you said, people often wonder. I wonder too.
Yeah.
um, what do you got coming up next for the rest of the year? You know, in the content game and running and races. I think you mentioned before we hopped on, you were thinking of maybe doing some road, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. I think I do have another trail race coming up in literally a week from now. Um, so I'll be running this time next week, actually. It'll be a 50-kilometer race with 1,000 meters
Okay.
of elevation. So another
Oof.
tough challenge.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm really excited to get that done. And then after that, I'm gonna go back into the road and do a few 5Ks and 10Ks just because of what we talked about earlier. I think I need to work on that sometimes in order to still progress in the ultra marathon. So it's about time that I do a bit of speed because I haven't done that much this year. Yeah.
Are you chasing any time goals for either the future 5Ks or even this 50K coming up?
Yeah, not the 50K. That's the good part about trail and ultra marathons. There's so much variance in
Yeah.
different courses, so the times almost mean nothing. And it's more about just having a good race in terms of nailing your nutrition and hydration and your pacing as well, because obviously it's a long race, so you can't go out too quick. But it's really effort based, which I like. Um, but yeah, 5K, I've plateaued for maybe like 3 years now. I ran 1540 in the 5K 3 years ago, and I just have not improved for 3 years. And that is definitely because I've like focused more on ultras, but it'll be nice to get back to it. The promising thing is that with ultramarathon training, I managed to get my 5K back down to 16:07. So if
Okay.
I can shave another 27 seconds off with specific training, which I think is possible, I'll be back in 5K PR shape, which will be nice. Because, yeah, I miss running a fast 5K as well now, I'd say.
Yeah, it's got to be fun when you hit it. The training's a whole nother, but looking forward to seeing it and what you got, man. So I want to ask you, like, if you had to give a message for those listening, whether it be a newer runner or a pro runner or someone fast, like to enjoy running and do it at a high level for a long time, what would that be?
Yeah, I think making sure to be highly adaptable, flexible, and go with your gut. So if you're feeling like you need a break from a certain distance and needing to explore another race format, do it. And that will just help you in the long run in terms of longevity. So make sure to look at the bigger picture, and your priority should always be to be running in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, because that's where most of the gains actually come from, like the layers of
Yeah,
the years and
continuous.
layers of continuous running. Yeah. So that's always my biggest tip for anyone, I'd say. Yeah.
No, I love that, man. Well, big thanks to you, Sota. I appreciate you hopping on and sharing about your training and how you coach and so many gems throughout this episode. For those listening, I'm sure you grabbed a few. Um, Definitely check out his YouTube, Instagram. He's on Strava. I'll share some of that as well on here in the show notes. Sota, again, I really appreciate you, man. Thanks for giving me the time and hopping on the People Run podcast. For those listening, Thanks for tuning in. Share it, give us a rating, and until next time.
Thank you so much.